Are you getting started in investing in real estate? I did back in 2009 when I bought my first rental property in Seattle, Washington. Today, we've got over $2 billion of assets under ownership, and that's around 10,000 units. But back then, I didn't know too much. We didn't have as many podcasts as we have today. So, what are the best books out there? And I'll give my commentary on each of these.
That's a sad commentary in and of itself.
Before we get going, I'm going to put these out, not necessarily in the best book order, but the order that I think you should be reading them. Now, first one, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is written by Robert Kiyosaki. It's known as the Magic Purple Book. He also has another book on my list here, which is the Cash Flow Quadrant. Many people will say that this is the foundational book for real estate investing and entrepreneurship, and the alternative financial ideas that all of our parents didn't tell us. I found myself in a very similar situation. My parents taught me to go to school, study hard. They had college degrees, and they blindly put money in the 401k, which are traditional investments, where we want to go into alternative investments instead. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the book, but a lot of it is just mindset, and it funnels you into their educational program where they teach you wholesaling properties, flipping houses. The opposite stuff I talk about on this channel, where I'm more talking to the working professionals out there who make good salaries and already have a decent amount of income. Many of you guys out there are already accredited investors. You certainly don't want to waste your time flipping houses, taking on the risk that's associated with that. But nevertheless, great book. Really starts to teach you about buying assets. One big knock on Mr. Kiyosaki is that he tends to use a lot of words to say really basic esoteric ideas. For the most part, it's a lot of good mindset. I think a lot of people who have been saving for a couple of decades, maybe you're already in your 40s and 50s, it's a great book. But when I was starting out, I didn't have a lot of bad financial habits. Rich Dad, Poor Dad wasn't too impactful for myself. But I do think it's a great first start for a lot of people. The next book is the opposite of that book. And instead of more the mindset side that Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad gives you, the Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller is a lot of the tangibles. And there's one chart that I think is really pivotal. And I think it speaks to what the content in that book is. There are a lot of fundamentals on understanding the different classes from A class, B class, C class of different rental properties. We put this all in an e-course that you guys can get for free, especially if you're a non-accredited investor, the remote rental e-course. And we would teach you how to buy little turnkey rentals, because that's how I initially got started after I bought a few rental properties in Seattle, Washington. I went out of state, started to buy all these turnkey rentals. But this is before I became an accredited investor and started to get into more syndications and private placements. But I do think from a fundamental standpoint and more technical knowledge, Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller is where it's at. Now, the third book here, again, is a Kiyosaki book, The Cash Flow Quadrant. And this is, again, more mindset type of book, but it explains how there are different cash flow quadrant type of individuals. I'm going to get it wrong off the top of my head, but generally there's the employee mindset type of people who go to work. They have W-2 jobs or 1099s, and they make money, but they pay a lot of taxes because they're paying all these self-employment tax. And another one is getting from the small business owner, right? You think you're your own boss, but you're paying a lot of taxes there too. Really what you want to be getting to is the business owner, where you are getting compensated for the profits. This is where we teach people in our group how a lot of the tax strategies and the difference between ordinary income, which is taxed differently than passive income. And it coincides with the teachings of this cash flow quadrant. The one good thing is it helps you understand the tax strategies that we teach. And again, it probably motivates you because it puts it in a great framework. But if you're already gung-ho about real estate, tax benefits, depreciation, and the fact that you're investing in hard assets, you may or may not need this book.
$5.
A lot of what I've seen just from my personal growth over the years is a lot of this is just getting over your own head and getting motivated. I do think that a big part of this is getting the community around you. Like they say, you are the average of the 5 people around you. When I first started, I was just stuck in the cubicle land with a bunch of people who did the traditional investments. They also blew their money on stupid things too. But it wasn't until I became an accredited investor, started to interact with other purely passive accredited investors, and they were investing in alternative investments, cutting their tax bills by at least a fraction, if not half, and doing some accredited investor banking, which you can also get that e-course by signing up for our club and community at thewealthelevator.com/club. The last book here is Equity Happens by Robert Helms and Russell Gray. These two guys were, early mentors of mine. I think I joined their mastermind group back in 2016, 17. They were very pivotal in my early days of learning how to be a real estate syndicator. They wrote a book called Equity Happens. And what I really liked about this book, it was more of a story where you followed this fictional character and how they met somebody, and that person was really wealthy, and they showed them how to use all these tax strategies. And they really debunked a lot of the traditional investment ideas. And for me, I think it came at a pivotal time because I had heard all these ideas from other people and from books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. And I knew real estate was where it was at in the Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. But it wasn't until it was put in this kind of fun story that it all came together. Now, those are all the books.
How go your plans to conquer the world?
Here's the gotcha. It's important to note that reading any more is just going to be overkill. Don't be that shelf help guy. I said it right. Shelf help is the term that we use. To use this as a crux to say, oh, I need to get more educated. I need to read more books. I need more podcasts. Of course, check out my book, The Wealth Elevator, which just released this year, which is the quintessential system that I kind of use to put all four of these books together.
Gentlemen, this is the real thing. This is what you've been trained for. You are America's best.
But after you read that book, of course, you need to step up and take action. And it doesn't matter how many freaking books you're going to read. Many Fortune 500 human resource departments use this theory of the 70-20-10 rule. I got this when I started to working as a management trainee in my early career days as an engineer, where they use this to develop their employees. 70% of learning is what you do by doing.
Ask too many questions, man. It's time to get to work. Come on.
Experiential. 20% is learned from other people. And that's why we built this community for you guys. And we host events from time to time. Again, you've got to book that onboarding call with myself so we get to know you better, which is the secret sauce to our events, right? Everybody that comes, we know who you are. And we don't just invite random strangers or weirdos out there.
Too many questions.
See, the last 10% is the academic book and classroom training. So the 4 books, like I mentioned here, which I really think is all you really need to get moving. Most people turn this completely upside down and they spend so much time reading and getting all this information. But again, until you start to apply this framework, which is adding the 20% of getting other people around you and the 70%, which is actually you going out as an individual and doing it, you're not making much progress. One of the big mistakes I see people make is they just keep reading and reading. I used to be an engineer. A lot of our investors are engineers, and those engineers, they succumb to this over-analyzing and they are frozen and they never do anything.
Let's not even analyze.
And a part of this that's really cool, when you're able to invest your money at a higher rate of return. What rates of return? Check out my site at thewealthelevator.com/returns and just what a simple rental property can get you. Do the math for yourself. If you can squeeze out that extra return a year and you multiply that by the years that you would have other been sitting on your butt just reading these books, that's a lot of money. And so do the math yourself. Calculate how much that is. For a lot of my investors, they may have a couple $100,000 of money just sitting around doing nothing. At just a mere 10% a year, and not even including the tax benefits, that could mean $20,000 a year or a couple grand a month. Or when you break that down by day, so you go 2,000 divided by 30. Wait, let me calculate that out. 2,000 divided by 30. So that's $66 a day. So I know a lot of people out there, especially the penny pitchers, the fire people, you guys waste so much time to save just $10. But here you are not doing anything, and every day in that example, you're wasting 60, 70 bucks every single day.
H2O!
Now, there's another book out there, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week, and he talks about the $100,000 MBA, where you don't really go to school, but you jump right into the business or the investment. Now, this method may lead you to operate at a loss, but you would have far more experience than getting into that silly $100,000 formal MBA program from some brick and mortar school out there, which is why most people in our space don't really think of too highly of going to traditional college and higher level degrees, especially when you're able to tap into this type of investing. One last thing, maybe this has gone away since COVID a little bit, but there still are a lot of these training programs out there that would have people spend $20,000, $30,000, some even like $50,000 on this coaching and training. Probably some of the people on this list today have monetized their influence through these training programs. Generally speaking, these training programs aren't really that good. Sure, they have somewhat of a community around, which is why we've tried to focus in on that within our group. But I've always thought it was completely wrong to, if you're getting started, just spend the 20, 30 grand on a down payment on a $100,000 home and get moving and getting that $300, $400 of monthly cash flow right there. Heck, you could even overpay for a property from a second tier turnkey provider and get your education that way. Again, focus on doing than spending your time on reading books or doing training. A lot of these companies I'm talking about, they focus in on non-accredited investors, people who don't have money. And that's why I focused on putting everything on the Wealth Elevator for free. You guys can sign up at thewealthelevator.com/club. We'll get a lot of the free, and that's what I try to do to pay it forward or send the Wealth Elevator back down for others. If you guys found this information useful, give me a like. And if you got any particular questions, drop it into the comment box below. We'll record a future video on those topics in the future. But with that, my mission here is to bring this to the masses because this really changed my life. Investing in real estate, alternative investments, getting outside of the normal 401k Wall Street stuff, and then unlocked all these tax strategies and you pile on infinite banking. And to me, I think it really helps expedite things 3 times as fast as doing it the normal frugal way. But if you're a non-accredited investor, check out our non-accredited investor videos. If you're a accredited investor, check out our videos more on the syndication and private placement section. Depending on where you're at, maybe check out our general coaching calls and you can vicariously see where you fit in some of those calls.